So why exactly did mankind fall, and what does that actually mean for us? What is it to be fallen? What exactly is this? So first up on the theory list on kind of orchestrating the idea philosophically and theologically, we actually have Irenaeus, so of Lyon. So his idea was that Adam and Eve were essentially in an immature state, so they were childlike. So the actual original sin, which we will come to the origin of that theory, the actual original sin was not a direct measurement against God per se, as it was a full blown rebellion in Irenaeus's mind. Irenaeus essentially hypothesized that due to their childlike state, it stands to reason that they committed this out of essentially ignorance. They just did not know any better. It was a flaw in humanity that, unfortunately, the serpent's lies had kind of extrapolated out of them. They posed enough of a question that, given their childlike state, they were able to commit the sin. So it was simply a sin out of immaturity, not a direct sin out of rebellion against God, as if they were revolting against the Creator. So this is one of the more major theories of early Christian thought. He was second century Irenaeus. So next, we're actually moving on to Augustine of Hippo, probably one of the massive proponents and shapers of what we know as theology. Really pinpointed. We had a lot of different schools of thought pre-Augustine, and once Augustine hit the scene, he wanted to try to unify as much as possible between philosophy of religion and theology of Christ altogether. So Augustine's thoughts were slightly different, although somewhat in keeping, just a lot more severe. So Augustine of Hippo is the one who actually coined the term original sin, the theory that there is now an innate sin nature born within us due to the fall from Adam, since we all descend from Adam, as well as, post flood from Noah. So we all essentially descend from two people for sure. This now natural state of committing a sin is within us. It is an actual direct problem of us. So from birth, Augustine said we literally need the salvation of Christ, and the Old Testament, they needed the salvation set forth through sacrificial offering. It is literally how would I put that? A consequence of the nature that causes us to need the grace of God. We literally need it. It is required for us to even go on as human beings, and to live. So it is referenced that the Lord says in the Word in Genesis 3 that you will now dying you shall die, meaning that we in our fallen state naturally start to degenerate and sort of erode away, which we obviously call age. So we just begin to age, and this causes us to die. And if we die in our state without the grace of God, without some sort of a reconciliation from our sin with God, we will surely be dead forever. So yeah, aggressive. And the next we have Thomas Aquinas, who wrote probably one of the most exhaustive multi-volume sets of theology and apologetics. Apologetics mainly focused on the at the time varying thoughts. He was roughly 12th and 13th century. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It might be 14th century. For some reason, the years are disappearing from my head right now, so I apologize. But he was in the medieval era, towards the end of the medieval era. So his works were extremely exhaustive. I have not read them all, as they are quite exhaustive. I have a lot of other things to read for school, as well as my own study. But Aquinas definitely saw original sin. Absolutely, I'm just checking my notes here. But he actually took that theory a little bit farther, in going as far as to actively report that it was the pride sin, the sin of pride, and he makes mention the fact that pride is considered one of the highest levels of abominations, or toeva in Hebrew. Pardon my mispronunciation if I mispronounced it. As the gravest of sins. That's a long-going theory in sin and what it means for the fall of mankind, which we'll talk about here in a second. But That mostly goes over the idea, and Aquinas puts it this way, that it was a sin of pride. Just like Augustine, this wasn't, which is why I'm combining the two, this wasn't a immaturity situation. It was a direct revolt. It was a childlike revolt, but it catapulted humanity into a level of maturity that humanity was not meant to have at that time, or potentially ever. We just don't know for sure. So the theory goes that this was a sin of pride, which is why this is the top level of sin. It's also the sin that Lucifer had, which made him fall, becoming Satan, becoming the devil. So that is why it is held in the utmost regard. But this original sin is actually the sin of pride. It was an actual revolt against God, but it was somewhat reconciled with Irenaeus's thought, which is interesting because reading them both, I do see kind of a great shift on how they view Adam as a person. However, obviously both understand that Adam was the first man, but viewing the actual object of Adam and Eve's sin, of eating of the fruit, viewing that differently. So I see it that way, at least. If you don't, please let me know in the comments. We can obviously converse about that. But yeah, then Aquinas really took a lot of additional steps in trying to understand that the sin nature is born within us. And this gets us to actually one of my favorite thinkers, and probably one of the best to write on the subject, was Bonhoeffer, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was alive in, mostly did his work in the 30s and 40s, and then was executed by Adolf Hitler in 1945. So his ideas really stem from man's nature to be sicut deus, which is Latin for like God. And he really coined this idea that we were creatures of God and then separated via the sin, and now became essentially godless creatures. So even though God communes with us, we actively do not commune in return with God. So it's in our very nature to gain some sort of autonomy from the serpent's lies. It was a false level of autonomy that Satan had prescribed to Eve, and Adam and Eve both believed it long enough to commit the original sin. So in this pursuit of sicut deus, we see all of mankind somewhat fall apart. And so finally, what does this mean? What is fallen man? What are we like? Why is it this way? Why do we exist in this way? Well, fallen man's quite simple. We are given a complete body that we destroy. We are given a complete mind that we pollute and corrupt. We are given a complete world that we deface and defile consistently. Now, granted, I am not for or against certain policies necessarily. I'm not talking about, green earth, green peace. I'm talking about green humanity. How do we be clean? The earth is under our dominion. God gave us the planet under our dominion. So he allowed us to have this creation. We didn't create the planet, he did, but he's allowing us to have it. So what I'm talking about is, how do we return to God? What is this fallen state? How badly does it affect us? Well, it affects us in every single possible way. Our bodies slowly erode away. They grow up, they peak, they climax, they fall apart. So I'm still at the tipping of the peaking era of my body, so not doing too bad. At age 31, I still got some time, but eventually my body will degrade away. So because we're no longer in the perfect presence of God, God's presence is perfect, I am not. So I argue against any ideology that mankind was ever actually perfect. I believe the creation stance was perfect, but the second we gain our own free will, I believe this perfection, this idea of perfection, kind of goes into a bit of a background stasis, because every single decision that we make, every single move, every step, every breath, every thought, especially thought, it somewhat detracts from this state. We live in a world where, pornography is rampant. Desires and inappropriate feelings are rampant. Drug abuse, alcohol consumption is rampant. Anger at others, misperceiving reality to the point of hate. This is the product of being in a fallen state. So I understand Bonhoeffer's, ideology of sicut deus. I do, 100%. But I do not think, I think humans have degraded so far in this fallen world that we are much farther away from being like God, as humans these days simply do not perceive the things God perceives anymore. We just simply have this entirely different view of reality, this conflated view of self and interest and self-interest, and in a combined state can be extremely dangerous. And we see this actively destroying, the world and humanity and lives around us. So how do we get away from this fallen state? Well, the only way to get away from the fallen state is to call upon and believe in and follow the Lord Jesus Christ. That is the only way to reconcile this. For a long time in human history, the Jews had the temple. They had the holiest of holies. They had just extravagantly strict curriculums of teaching so that they would understand their own culture and understand what God has done for them. Well, Christ came and fulfilled more than half of the Mosaic covenant. So at least that's what us Christians believe in. So he is now the sacrifice. So with that, it is still up to us to learn what God has done, learn what God is doing, and learn what God will do. That is the only way to get out of this fallen state, to understand and commune with God. Now, we cannot, as human beings, understand God fully. It is impossible. God is simply infinite. We are finite. Our brain space is finite. Our ability to learn is finite. Although I always maintain we do not know how much we can learn. There's clearly a limitation to that. There is an amount of information that our brain simply cannot process anymore. So that is just the truth of it. So with that, we have to understand God the best we can. And God gave us that with the Holy Bible, with his word. He allowed his word in the form of Jesus Christ to commune with us. Jesus was first the word as an extension of the Lord Jesus Christ. So what it means to be fallen is to understand that we not only are imperfect, but we will have a natural tendency to desire perfection, but we will desire it in the wrong way, in the wrong manner, and go about it through wrong enterprises. We will pick a path that does not actually lead to this, but it's how we perceive things, how we behave. It's how we think we can get there. God is always present with us, and he allows us to figure this out. He allows us to go down these paths, and he allows us the information on how to correct that path and how to get on the path that God has set forth. So what does it mean to be fallen? Just that. We are imperfect, and it is not going to get any better. What can we do about it? We can realize God is perfect, and God will allow us to get better through his guidance so that we do not have to do it alone. So that is that. So, with that, I will bid you guys adieu, and I will see you guys in the next one in Genesis 4.